well. I'm excited about today because I have an old friend that I haven't interviewed for a very long time. However, I've been watching on the Underwire, and it is Lenon Honor. The reason why I like to have people like Lenon and Sadiq Bukhari, who's actually in the film, by the way, that we're going to talk about, is because in order for one to grow in any type of spiritual way, one has to go deep down into the depths, to the seed of things. If we want to understand consciousness, we have to understand how we are being indoctrinated with tools to our consciousness and look at things from a very deep level so we can be very pure in nature. Lenon is a loving father, a loving husband. He's a documentarian. He's a researcher. He is a musician. I mean, the list goes on and on. Please go back into my archives and also type in to your search engine, which never lies, of all the works that he has brought to the forefront. He is known for decoding things that are hidden in plain sight. And this work that we are going to talk about this evening is no different. It's called Beyond Gangster, BlackFace, a critical analysis of gangster rap. It is now playing. Make sure that you go to www.beyondgangsterblackface.com. I've seen this 5 times because every time I see it, and with Lenon Honor's films, you have to do that. You watch it for entertainment the first time and you soak it in, and then you go back and you really break it apart because he makes you think about many things. And I'm honored to have him once again on the H20 network. Welcome, Lenon Honor.
Oh, thank you so much, Rudy. I appreciate the kind and generous introduction. And it's true, we go back many years, and it's wonderful to be able to reconnect with you after all this time. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. I get it. When I have people like you, I get excited, because there's so much to talk about. And I'm laughing at myself because I actually wrote notes, and I'm going to go back and put the media in because I will stray. Because you bring up with your critical analysis of everything that you do, these numbers. And, I'm a very visual human being. And when you talk about the numbers of what you are analyzing, it is literally mind-blowing. And I have to say that at the very beginning with your intro, fabulous, talking about Los Angeles and all of the hegemonistic type of entities that are based there, I cracked up to myself and I said, Los Angeles, the city of angels, the queen of angels. There are many names for what that means. And I thought to myself, well, what type of angels are we talking about? And I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about all of those institutions cultural artifacts that we know to be. So I thought that was very fascinating. And I think it's fascinating for me. I know that you've done this for a very long time. But there is a reprogramming that's happening with this movie that just came out about NWA. There's no mistake about it. It's very plain. And, it's right there. Is that why you decided to do a critical analysis of this film? Because it's like a reprogramming of the next generation.
Yes, and we find this to be the case too, not just with music groups, but in particular certain types of movies that come out that present certain ideas. As an example, in Disney, a lot of the older Disney movies, they reproduce those and kind of digitally remaster them like every 20 to 25 years. And the idea is that you can kind of indoctrinate the next generation by representing it, and then the next generation's parents, they have all these wonderful memories from when they were children of viewing those films, so they want to go and get it for their children, so you can kind of perpetuate the programming. Now, it's one thing if the programming is positive programming, that could be a wonderful thing, but the critical analysis, really what it's about is being able to ascertain or determine whether or not whatever media artifact you're listening to or reading or viewing is actually good for you. Is it in your best interest? Is it in your children's best interest? So when NWA, it was probably about 2.5 years ago when I heard that they were putting together a film biopic about NWA, and it struck me as strange because I thought about it. I was like, out of all of the hip hop groups in history, why would they focus on that particular group? Why out of all the groups? Because what I remember when I was a child, and a lot of the young men in my generation, we were adversely or negatively impacted by NWA's lyrics, their general themes and messaging that was present there. Although during that time we didn't necessarily understand it, we didn't have the our best interest. But as I grew older and as I dealt with my own intellectual progressions and as I began to study and research, I realized that, a lot of the stuff that I used to listen to, a lot of stuff I used to read, a lot of the stuff that I used to view, movies, television shows, a lot of the music that we used to listen to was not in my best interest and was not in my generation's best interest. So NWA having a movie, when I heard that they were in production, I said, well, that's going to be problematic because as a grown man now, I'm a father of 5 children, I'm 42. When I think about NWA's lyrics, I was like, you know what? That's going to have a detrimental effect because what tends to happen is that these types of movies, when they come out, what these movies tend to do as propaganda is to paint these hip hop artists, or paint these rap artists, these gangster rappers, if you will, NWA, in a positive light. And so the next generation, they walk away from, and I knew this was going to be the case, they will walk away from the film biopic, which is titled Straight Outta Compton, with a positive impression of NWA, and then they will go and they will listen to NWA's lyrics based upon that positive impression, and they don't have the critical thinking skills to necessarily determine or ascertain whether or not those lyrics are in their best interest. And so now we have a whole new generation that will be indoctrinated into that programming. That's why I decided to do the film. In other words, and in short, I wanted to put forth something that would provide critical analysis based upon intellect, but also based upon scientific evidence and proofs, word counts, calculating what words are being used the most in their lyrics, what are the major themes, what are the words that are being used over and over again, how frequently those words are being used per minute averages, and then also talking about the sociological implications of those major themes. And that's why I decided to put this film together, because it will provide parents and children with the intellectual tools that they will need in order to determine whether or not the music that they're listening to, the movies that they're viewing, the books that they're reading, what have you, any media artifact is in their best interest or not.
Well, there is, and we've talked about this in the past on other radio shows, that there is no mistake for this reprogramming of society. And one of the things that I found really interesting when I was watching your film is that it took me back to connecting the dots in the thread of an earlier time. And that's in the 1960s and 70s. And during that time period, it was very upheaval on all levels of reality. And there was even a spiritual tint to that. The war and families being broken apart, I think, in the Black community and the Latino community, that was the beginning of many things. It dispersed things. And I feel like, when the 80s came, you had crack that infiltrated when gangster rap began. And I thought to myself, wow, wouldn't it be interesting if the hegemonistic entity created certain things to suppress people? Because again, during that time period, people were in revolutionary mode. They were not going for the okie doke. The Black Panthers were on the move. They took a lot of people out, and I could just totally see somebody in the government be like, we have to shut this down. We got to shut indigenous people and other rebel rousers down. So we got to push things out on the street, and we have to create this, I keep thinking of MK Ultra type of sound to go into the consciousness of the people, to make them behave in a certain way, to be in a certain way, to look at, the feminine and the masculine aspect of reality. We have to literally suppress the essence of soul. I know that sounds crazy, but you know how I think, Lenon.
Yeah, well, there's historical precedence for this. In other words, that if you're going to oppress a people or a group of people or many people, you do have to enact some level of mind control. In other words, you have to control the manner in which they see themselves in the first place, and then how they see themselves on the world stage as they relate to other people. You have to control how men see women and how women see men. And if you can control it in such a way to where and you can materialize a negative outcome, then ultimately that would be what we would call the agenda. So you gave a historical precedence or an historical example. The 60s and 70s, yes, there was a time of social upheaval, a lot of social change as well. But in particular within the African American community, one of the things that was taking place in terms of the mind control apparatus was the promotion of blaxploitation films.
Indeed.
And blaxploitation films had an extremely detrimental effect on the psychology of African Americans, but also on the perceptions that other groups of people had about African Americans. And we talk a little bit about about that inside the film, the whole black exploitation era, and one of the things that it presented as a major theme was what we would call pimp culture. This notion that as men, our job is to pimp our women. As men, our job is to take advantage of our women sexually, to turn our relationship with women into a form of profit, financial profit, or sexual profit in some cases. And what comes out of that, of course, is pimps, players, hustlers, that type of a dynamic. This is what was being pushed during that time period, the late 60s, early 70s, in terms of the mind control media apparatus. Well, hip hop, the precursor to hip hop is actually blaxploitation films. And if y'all listen to early hip hop, you'll hear the same type of terminology that you heard from the previous generation. See, my father's generation was exposed to the pimp culture programming that was present in blaxploitation films. That pimp culture programming carried itself over into early hip hop. Even the early stuff is there. But it wasn't until groups like NWA came onto the scene, which we do the critical analysis of their lyrics, wherein the pimp culture went to a whole nother level. But on top of that, which was extremely detrimental, was layered the gangster program. That was, in essence, gang culture as being something that should be normalized. So, in other words, my father's generation received the pimp and player programming from blaxploitation films. My generation received the pimp and player programming plus the gangster archetype programming through gangster rap. So there is I guess we can say, and it's not a positive legacy, but it is a legacy in terms of programming that has adversely impacted the psychological condition and the mentalities of African American males for the last two generations, coming through blaxploitation films, going into hip hop. I would say reaching its early zenith with gangster rap, but then the elements present in gangster rap, as we illustrate inside the film, continue to carry themselves over into more modern forms of rap lyrics, and not just in rap lyrics, but also in media, any other type of media programming that's out there dealing with the African American experience. So yes, this is all to say that there has been a historical precedent for this in terms of mass media programming being used as a tool of psychological warfare and mind control to influence how people speak, to influence how people think, to impact, in fact, how people behave. And that, in essence, is the agenda when we talk about mind control.
And when you were giving the numbers, the statistics, what was it, 553 times that they defaced women, and then you talked about violence. I was blown away by that. And then, you know, as you stated in the film, when someone keeps playing the same song over and over and over again, the numbers go up exponentially. And then I began to think too, Lenon, not only are you getting the programming from the actual media artifact itself, you are getting the advertising that goes along with that from all of these little technological gadgets. Now, Walker and Smith says that we've gone from being exposed to 500 ads a day back in the 1970s as to today, 4,000 to 10,000 advertisement straight on and subliminally each day. So not only is one getting the programming from the actual music itself and the frequency and things of this nature, you're getting the advertisement, which is mind-blowing.
Yes. And I want to take that a step further. Not only are you getting the advertisement from, let's say, corporate organizations or institutions, but you're also getting the advertisements in terms of a mentality,
yes,
a way of thinking. And so, to be clear with your audience, what I did with my critical analysis was, I took 6 months to analyze NWA's lyrics. I listened to every single track. They have 4 albums of music. I listened to every single track over and over again. In some cases, I had to listen 100 times or over 100 times. And I began to write down what words are being used and how often those words are being used. And so, it's a very tedious process, but it was very much well worth it, because through this process, I was able to identify what was being repeated the most. And people understand that when we talk about mind control, the most efficient means of mind control is simply through repetition. That if you can repeat something to someone over and over again, at a certain point, even if it's a lie, the person will accept it as being true. It's only a matter of repeating the lie enough and selling the lie as if it is true. This also means the lie of a particular type of mentality, gangsterism or gang culture, pimp culture, in fact, that if you promote it and you continue to present it and you repeat it as being something that is good, that is something that is valuable, that is something that should be your self-identity, that there will be people, because of the repetition, who will accept it as being true. So to identify what words are being used the most, through the repetition, whatever words are being used the most, or whatever even phrases in some cases that are being used the most, that's where you will be able to identify and have an indication as to what is the major theme of that particular song in this case. But I just didn't go for each song. I went through all the songs, and I went through all the songs on their first album. I went through this tedious process of writing all of this down, calculating numbers, crunching calculators, per minute averages, how frequently these things were being said. What are the major themes? I went track by track. The first album did the same thing for the second album, did a combination of both, did the same thing for the third album, did a combination for all three, did the fourth album, did a combination for all four. 6 months of work, critical analysis. And what I found ultimately was that the figures that I was able to identify and come up with at the end was quite staggering. In other words, and see, the thing, and you brought this up a moment ago, I think we talk about this inside the film, it's not just the repetition in terms of the words that are being used on each song, it's how many times a person listens to that song. Because if a person listens to the song 10 times, then you basically, there's a cumulative effect. However many times they disrespect women, well, now you multiply it by 10 because you've listened to that song 10 times. So just to give people an idea in terms of the statistical analysis, I'm going to read this verbatim from the script in the documentary. If we were to combine the statistical analysis of all four of NWA's albums, we would come to a statistic-based. Well, let me stop. Before I do this, let me just say this too, Rudy. I have to say this, that for many adults, it's different because we have already arrived at a point in our lives, most of us at least, and we're still growing, of course, intellectually, where we can engage in some level of critical thinking and critical analysis, where we can say, okay, is that really in my best interest? What is really being said here? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it disrespectful towards women? Is it disrespectful towards men? What is it promoting? What is the advertisement that is being presented here? See, the major theme is an advertisement for a way of thinking. So as adults, we can do that. But the critical question that we have to ask is, when we were children, did we have that aptitude to think critically? And most of us did not. And I can tell you testimony, from personal experience of individuals, people that I knew growing up, who were not fortunate enough to be shielded enough from this type of programming, not just with gangster rap, not just with hip-hop music or rap music, but we're talking about television shows, movies, so forth and so on, that had an adverse effect on them, and they began to self-identify with the programming that they saw and the archetypes that were being presented through gangster rap or through the movies. As an example, the archetypes that were being presented within the blaxploitation films were largely pimp archetypes, pimps and players, and there are a lot of males from my father's generation, including my father, by the way, who took that as an archetype for manhood. See, but he did that not when he was a grown man. He did that and accepted that, and he was looking for a self-identity when he was a boy, like so many of us do. It's perfectly normal and natural for young boys to look for something to identify with. This is what it means to be a man. The problem is that so many of us, boys and girls, when we were growing up, we didn't have the aptitude, we didn't have the ability to think critically. Okay, so I just want to be clear that when we talk about these statistics, really what we're dealing with is the mind of a young, impressionable child. What does it mean how does it impact their mentality, their language, the way they dress, the way they behave, the way that they relate to their species have? The young boys, how do they relate to the young girls? The young girls, how do they relate to the young girls, how do they relate to young boys? When they are being bombarded through repetition with certain ideas and concepts that are detrimental to, let's say, their personal identity, that is detrimental to, let's say, male-female relationships, that is detrimental to the notion of being a dedicated husband and father to your children. Okay, so I just want to put this in context. So when we look at the lyrics, and when we do the critical analysis of the lyrics, we begin to understand what's being repeated, and whatever is being repeated, that is what is indoctrinating the youth. That is what indoctrinated me. In blaxploitation films, that is what indoctrinated my father. So when I did the critical analysis of NWA, these are the final statistics that I came up with, but throughout the documentary, I list all kinds of statistics throughout. If we were to combine our statistical analysis of all four of NWA's albums, we would come to a statistic-based conclusion concerning the major themes present in NWA's complete body of work. This would include 48 tracks with a total runtime of 3 hours, 9 minutes, and 44 seconds. Here are some of the top major themes present within NWA's complete discography. The promotion of sexual promiscuity, 86 times. The endorsement of alcohol consumption, 86 times. References to drugs, 87 times. NWA members committing violence against African American men, 88 times. Disrespect of other rappers, 91 times. References to guns, 93 times. The disrespect of men, 193 times, self-aggrandizement 345 times, and ladies and gentlemen, the most preeminent thing presented within NWA's full body of work, all four of their albums, their full discography, was the disrespect of women 553 times. Now, we are talking about young children. In my case, 10, 11 years old, around that time, maybe a little bit younger, hearing NWA. And it's not just that I listened to one song once or one album once. We're talking about listening to these songs multiple times. And that's what I mean by the repetition. So if within their 4 albums of work, you have 553 times wherein women are being disrespected, what if a young boy listens to those 4 albums, let's say 5 times? Okay, well now you multiply that by 5. Okay, there's a cumulative effect. It's not as if the programming automatically changes mentality or behavior within the boy, but it will have a steady influence, and that influence will grow the more time that he is exposed to the repetition within those lyrics. And not only, last point, not only how this impacts the young boys who are listening to this, wherein they're listening to a music wherein the disrespect of women is taking place 553 times, and they're listening to it repeatedly, but then also, how does it impact the self-esteem of young girls?
Indeed.
You see?
And you're generous. You're more generous than me, Lenon, because as you were saying that about the young children, yes, we need to make, and this is a wonderful film for that, and will give tools to people to decode these things. But I know some people our age.
Oh yes.
And let's just speak on it, because it's no whole bar on the H20 network. This is the truth is the truth, Ruth. And it's a mind blower. And then you have all of these connecting dots of the octopus's, arms that connect to other media artifacts that perpetuate this indoctrination. Love and hip hop, all these. I mean, it's a mind blower. And I'm saying this because I see this go through my feed with supposedly spiritual people, and I'm like, wow, this is like really interesting. And then in the other breath, they'll talk about the feminine energy, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, are you not really paying attention or analyzing? So, like, watching this film and then being observant of my own environment, which is very controlled, but thankfully I'm very happy about that, because I too don't watch television. I'm on my computer doing work and art. I don't watch television because of that fact. The indoctrination is mind-blowing. It's something that, I mean, that the rabbit hole goes so deep. But the question that I want to ask too, when it comes to all of these statistics and the programming, the tool of dehumanization, I noticed that as well. When you talk about that number 553, what does, from your opinion, revoke or give people license to revoke and to be responsible for when you objectify an actual human being and you turn them into an object?
Yeah, well, again, that's one of the reasons why I decided to do the documentary, because I knew that the film biography that was being presented or being created or produced for NWA was going to paint them in a positive light. And see, that I think that's the great challenge. It's as if the misogynist is to be revered, and because the misogynist is revered, he can continue to perpetuate the programming that has adversely impacted society. I mean, I don't mean to get off topic, but Donald Trump is a misogynist, but it doesn't matter, for whatever reason. And I don't even know if I'm answering the question, because let me be honest with you. When you first posed the question, one of the things that I have really become, especially more recently in my life, somewhat disturbed by is the degree to which people will defend this type of programming.
Indeed.
The degree to which not only men defend it, but in some cases women defend it.
Indeed.
Okay, so maybe I should. Okay, let me go here because you brought this up.
No, go there. I want you to go there. That's why you know how we do. Let's go down the rabbit hole.
I'm trying to be, choose my words carefully, because it's going to take both men and women to turn this thing around. When we look at, and I think I said inside the documentary, it's possible that the high levels of dysfunctional male-female relationships that we see within the African American community and other communities, in point of fact, may be the result of a repeated exposure to this type of program.
Indeed.
Whether that is in the lyrics, the rap lyrics, whether that is in other genres of music, in those lyrics, whether that is the love and the hip hop or the empire, or I mean, we can go all down the line. When was the last time we saw a positive representation of a loving family that was intact and it wasn't all this drama going on? You see, so part of what I'm saying, and I don't even know if I'm getting the question, sis, but I just want to be clear that there are women who buy into this indoctrination too. There are men who perpetuate it, and the men who do it, which is a shame, the misogynists, for whatever reason, are often given a free pass. It's as if it doesn't matter. So someone like Donald Trump can say something like, he can, talking about in this recording, where he can talk about, grabbing women's private parts, which is physical assault, and people will still go out and vote for him. I mean, I find it, and I'm not even into politics.
Me neither.
It's a sham anyway. But the point is that what is it about the human condition wherein the misogynist can be given so much praise and support? And it may very well be. And this will be the last point. I apologize if I don't even answer the question. it may very well be that the reason why.
And we are back. Go ahead, Lenon.
Yeah, so what I was saying was that it may very well be that the reason why the misogynist or the misogynist presents the sexism archetype in men is so supported is because it may very well be that the reason why they're being so supported is because we actually have generations of people who have been indoctrinated into accepting that particular archetype as being a positive or adequate representation of manhood. I don't know. Was that where we left off at?
Where we did, we were talking about the how society basically celebrates the misogynist and how you have men and women who are literally the defenders of this.
Yes, and I think that it is probable that one of the reasons why we have men and women who will defend misogyny, whether it comes in the form of politicians or whether it comes in hip hop or even the television shows that people watch or the movies that people watch, is because there are many men and women who have been indoctrinated and mind controlled into thinking that somehow the man who is the misogynist is the appropriate archetype for manhood in the first place.
Indeed. And I also think, I want your opinion on this. Man, there's so many things that are weaved into this film and just this topic in general. Some media artifacts are used to program the mind, of course, to think, and to continue the program, and as you just said, the ambassadorship of this. They always say that if you can get one to love the essence of slavery, no matter which way it comes, they'll literally fight for the system of slavery in which they've been encapsulated in. And I think that there's a Darwinistic, materialistic, based reality. The highlighting of this material plane. I'm trying to articulate it in a way that you will understand, but I think you might know what I understand. But it's like, I don't know, dangling the carrot in front of, the horse, but the horse never gets the carrot. They glamorize things. They glamorize the material world of reality. I mean, let's just go back to politics because that's a really good example. The promises of, I will make things better. If you do this and that. And that could be in money, that can be relationship, that could be sex, because we have this ideology of love and relationship completely twisted up.
Yes, you brought up politics. It's interesting when we talk about mind control. Every single 4 years here in the United States of America, when we have these presidential elections, politicians, they promise the same thing every single 4 years. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican, which are the major two parties. Really, it's all interconnected though anyway. But the point is that they promise people the same thing. We're going to lower taxes. We're going to create better health care. We're going to lower the budget deficit. We're going to fight against terrorism. We're going to keep you safe. We're going to make sure you guys have proper education. Your children have proper education. Well-funded schools. I mean, it's the same propaganda, and they spew the same promises every single 4 years. Nothing ever really changes, but you can always dangle that carrot in front of people. And you know, what's interesting is when we talk about dangling the carrot, it's not just promises. In some cases, the dangling of the carrot is a mentality.
Yes.
Okay, we want you to follow this particular mental outlook. And as you said, the Darwinistic type of orientation where it's materialism. Well, in point of fact, NWA, their materialism was largely projected through gang culture. So in terms of what was important materially, it's largely centered around gang culture, and I would even extend that to what I would call ghetto-centrism. That in and of itself is a particular type of mentality that is being dangled in front of the populace as something to continue to try to walk towards. And as long as you're walking towards it, you believe you're getting closer to something that you desire, but ultimately you're reaching closer and closer to self-destruction, whether that is in the form of negative male-female relationships, whether that is getting caught up in the prison industrial complex, whether that is putting yourself in a position wherein you're unable to function as a dedicated father to your children. I mean, we can go on and on and on. The dangling of the carrot is part of the mind control apparatus in and of itself.
They've completely removed soul. As you're speaking, it's like the degradation of soul and the dwindling of soul, and looking at things from a very superficial layer of reality. Going back to the objectifying women and turning them into an object, what does that release people from?
Well, for men, personal accountability, and for men having a level of compassion and true love for their species have, meaning love and appreciation for women. A lot of men who grew up during my generation, they got a lot of that programming, and even how they talk about women, just as a fundamental way of looking at women, it's always in the negative. It's almost as if women have to prove that somehow they're worthy of respect prior to even having to respect them as human beings in the first place. In fact, I don't think we included this in the documentary or on the DVD special features, but there was one of the speakers, a female speaker, Nunez. She did a fantastic job. We didn't include this, but she was talking about how one of the problems with the programming that NWA was presenting was that it was teaching young men, really boys, young impressionable boys, to see women as bitches by default. In other words, by default, whenever you see a woman, you see them as less than human being, and then the woman now has to prove that they're at least a human being. You see the problem with that orientation? So, and there's a lot of young men, and sis, let's be real, grown men today who are in their 30s, who are in their 40s, who are in their 50s, who are in their 60s, and they still hold to this notion that women are to be perceived as less than human beings. And therefore, because you can perceive them to be less than a human being, you can objectify them in any way that you want to. You can treat them as poorly as you want to because they're less than you are, and that it's up to women to prove that somehow they are worthy of basic human respect. So when we look at gangster rap, that was the primitive theme that was being presented within NWA's lyrics. Again, the primitive theme that they presented was the disrespect of women. Let me just take this a step further so that we can be clear, because disrespect means different things to different people these days. As an example, there are some men, this is how deep the programming is, wherein to call a woman a bitch is not disrespectful, or to call her a hoe is not disrespectful, or to call them a thought, right, or to call them a maggot, or to call them a bedwench. These are the terminologies that we have grown men using. Not just young boys, but grown men using when they talk about women by default, right? So to them, when they hear this type of verbiage inside music lyrics, they take a passive approach to it. It's no big deal because this is part of their vernacular, and they accept it as this is how we should talk about women anyway, because women are less than men anyway, so it's no big deal. But from my school of thought, sis, as a dedicated husband and father, and I live this every single day, and I'm very big on men conducting themselves in an honorable way and living with integrity, sincerely, not just talking the talk, but to walk the walk. Me and my wife been together now for 16 years, married for 14. We got 5 beautiful babies. I take my responsibilities as a father, and not that I'm perfect, but I take it so seriously that I delivered my last 3 babies with my own hands here at home, just me and my wife. I take this very seriously, and I've gone on this campaign to do my best to help younger men in particular to get on the right track so that their mentality won't be skewed. The point is this: their mentality won't be skewed about women. The point is this, that when I talk about disrespect, to call a woman a bitch is disrespectful under any situation. To call her a hoe is disrespectful under any situation. This is terminology that skanks and skeezers under any situation is unacceptable. This is a terminology that NWA used in their lyrics to describe women. And I know some people would argue where they're describing a certain type of women. Or even if they're describing a certain type of woman, that doesn't give people the right to dehumanize them. You see, and that's the thing. When you dehumanize another human being, what you're doing is you're putting them less than you, and so therefore you can treat them less than you would. You can treat them inhumanely, right?
Mm-hmm.
To take this one step forward, sis, and this will be the last point on this. NWA promoted rape culture, not just gang culture and pimp culture or player culture, but also rape culture, and they actually glorify rape in their lyrics 3 times. Okay, and I have the statistics to all back it all up. Again, it was a meticulous process. They do it 3 times, and not only do they do it 3 times, there's 3 forms of rape that they promote and they glorify. They talk about it as if it's a positive thing. But again, if you have negative views about women, if you're a misogynist, if you have hatred for women, you won't see this as being a problem. And there are a lot of men that don't see it as a problem. I have 2 daughters. I see it as a problem. 3 forms of rape. The first, rape, as in a man raping a grown woman, a grown man raping a grown woman, and talking about it in first person as if it is something that is desirable, that is something, this is what it means to be a man. The second, gang rape, meaning a group of males raping a woman. Most disturbingly, the third one is statutory rape. And the statutory rape is actually a gang rape that is taking place. And they talk about it in first person as if it is desirable. So when I say disrespect of women, the primitive theme presented within NWA is not just them calling women bitches and hoes. It's also the scenarios that they play out in terms of the abuse, either physical or sexual abuse of women, physical, sexual abuse, verbal abuse of women, that they play out in their lyrics and presented in such a way to where, and there are many young men, my generation, who grew up and saw it as the thing to do. This is the popular thing to do. This is what it means to be a man. And for so many of us, just to add to the equation, for so many of us who were growing up without fathers, we were looking for some type of a male archetype to aspire towards. Perfectly normal and natural for a young man, a young boy to do that. Our fathers weren't there. Many of us, we went to the hip hop. We went to the hip hop arts. Whatever the hip hop artist was saying, we took it at face value. And this is when we looked at these hip hop artists as our fathers. So it's like our fathers are speaking to us. Our fathers now, therefore, symbolically speaking, are the ones who are saying, calling women bitches and hoes. Our fathers are now the ones who are promoting gang cultures. Our fathers are now the ones who are talking about statutory rape, gang rape, and rape. And so now the young boy who sees this and hears this begins to see this as a form, as a respectful self-identity that now they can aspire towards. So part of what I'm saying is that when we talk about the disrespect of women in NWA's lyrics, we're talking about what is this, 553 times on 4 albums. But again, the repetition also plays is emboldened by the fact that we had young boys and young girls, for that matter, who were listening to these albums over and over and over again. Let me do one other thing, just to put these statistics in perspective that we talked about earlier. I'll read verbatim from the script from the documentary. To put these statistics in perspective, if you listen to NWA's complete discography, you would hear the promotion of sexual promiscuity, which was another major theme in the work. Sexual promiscuity about once every 2 minutes. Sexual promiscuity does great damage within the African American community because it creates dynamics wherein we have men who have multiple baby mamas and many children spread out. And how you going to raise a family? That was very, very difficult to do that. The promotion of sexual promiscuity once every 2 minutes, the endorsement of alcohol consumption about once every 2 minutes, NWA members committing violence against African American men about once every 2 minutes, references to guns about once every 2 minutes, disrespect of men once every 58 seconds, the word bitch once every 54 seconds, self-aggrandizement once every 32 seconds. You will hear the word nigga once every 29 seconds. And get this, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the impact that this has to have, directly or indirectly, on the psychology of young impressionable boys and girls, for that matter. You would hear the disrespect of women once every 20 seconds.
Wow. That's just, I'm sitting here and I'm like, that is just.
And again, sis, this is all, anyone can verify this because it's all statistic based. You know, it's based upon word counts. Okay, so this is, anyone can go and verify it if you want to go through the arduous task of listening to their lyrics over and over again, you will come to these statistics yourself. And I have to say that that was probably the most difficult part, or one of the most difficult parts about doing this documentary, was having to sit there and listen to this type of verbiage as a grown man. When I was a boy, I didn't think much of it. I just accepted the programming, and I went about my way, and it did influence me. But as a man, because I've matured and I have proper intellectual process to a certain degree, but more importantly, I have daughters that I'm raising and sons that I'm raising too. I have a whole different perspective on it. Sis, let me just to be clear too, because I want people to understand, because a lot of people say it doesn't impact people in this way. Listen, young children, absolutely, everything impacts us. In fact, I didn't start calling women bitches, and I'm telling on myself, but it's real. 16, 17 years old, I didn't start calling women bitches and hoes until after I started listening to NWA. You know, and a lot of folk in my generation, it was even before 15. Let me not even try to make it seem like, okay, so we're talking 14, okay? It was, and a lot of young African American males, it wasn't until we were exposed to that type of verbiage where it was being popularized and glorified in certain music lyrics that we began to adopt it and use it within our own vernacular. And I didn't escape that programming. I literally called women bitches and hoes after NWA came on the scene, and then other artists also began to perpetuate that programming, like Snoop Dogg. You know, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. Okay, so the programming impacts all of us, and no one is exempt. The idea for me, in terms of me doing the documentary, was to provide people with the defense mechanism intellectually to protect their subconscious mind from this type of programming.
And you know, I'm thinking about my childhood because we're around the same age, and let me tell you, the programming is deep because I grew up around multiculturally around a lot of people, and people who weren't even a part of the culture who was, you know, repeating those words. And I think back on that, I'm like, wow. I mean, it's just because cultural artifacts spill over into many. I mean, good God, man, they have an urban dictionary, Lenon. You know this. Who would have ever, who would have ever thought someone would have created an urban dictionary on the internet? You understand what I'm saying? Like the cultural artifacts go very much beyond and under and in and out and entangled, and it's just yeah, man. I don't even know what to say. I'm blown away by that.
Yeah, and I want to add something too here, and I think this is an important. Well, there's two things. One, I have to say this, that the impact wasn't just on African American folk, young boys and young girls. And see, the difference is it also impacted other groups of people's perception of African Americans. So, and what I mean by that is that there were a lot of groups of people who saw that as entertainment. African American folk, we saw it kind of like as entertainment too, but for a lot of us, we saw it as a self-identity that we aspired to. So that's a huge difference. I think that people, sociologically speaking, people really have to understand that we're talking about a group of people we're in dynamics where many of us were in, our fathers are not around, and we're simply looking for something to hold on to that can kind of give us an idea about what manhood is. And I was in the same situation myself. So understanding that cultural dynamic, the lyrics mean something different to us. Even though it was entertaining, it was also giving us hope for a quote-unquote better future. But the problem was that it set us up for failure on many different levels. But other groups of people may have seen it more as entertainment, but also the other dynamic that has to be considered is that even though it was seen as entertainment, it also shaped their perceptions of African American folk. You see, and that's a serious problem, because if the representation that they are receiving that is shaping their perception of African American folk is inherently negative, it's based upon pimp culture and players and gang culture and the disrespect of women and misogyny. If that's the idea that they're being imprinted with, then how does that impact how they begin to perceive African American folk? So let's just be very clear that the influence that it has had, not only on the African American community has been devastating, but also on other groups of people's perceptions of African Americans. It has also had a deleterious or destructive effect. That also has to be considered.
And it's funny when you say that too, because I always have these pictures in my mind and really taking what you're saying. Even people who don't mean to do that, Lenon, because when you have friends who are not of the same fabric, they take urban linguistics and vernacular, which I think is hilarious. It makes me laugh. It's entertaining, But that's a programming. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So like one is expecting you to speak in a certain type of way,
That's
be
right.
in a certain type of way, and when people know, oh, you went to NYU, yes, I did. And what? You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, it's sort of kind of, the culture has sort of kind of messed people up in a certain invisible type of way that has been so ingrained in the essence of reality that it becomes a part of nature and a part of thyself. So they don't recognize it, they don't see it, and they don't understand when you're trying to explain to them, when you sort of kind of give them the side eye, like, why are you talking to me in that crazy? Why are you talking urban vernacular? Am I not speaking English? Like, what's the problem?
Yeah, and I've run into that so much. In fact, and you know how deep this is, sis, is that there are some people, even with the film, they, just in their response, we had a very positive response. But then there are people, there are things that they didn't necessarily care for, and one of the things that they didn't like for whatever reason, this is just a few handful of people, was how it is that the manner in which I speak throughout the film kind of morphs and shifts at certain times. So, for instance, kind of like how I'm talking right now, it's kind of like the baseline modeling through which I kind of communicate in the actual film while I'm reading the script, because it's actually the script that I'm reading at certain points. Like I'm doing the narration, and then also I have voiceover parts where I'm actually reading from the script. And I've typed it out and wrote it in a particular type of way because I really wanted to tap into academia. It has to be presented in a particular way, and therefore the language has to be conducive to that type of an atmosphere. And the thing is, I go both ways. Like I can talk to you like how we're talking here, but then nigga, fuck you. I mean, I can do that too. But the point is this, and this is very interesting, that there were people who took offense to that. That they felt that I should use the vernacular that I was raised on, which is thoroughly dysfunctional, sis, throughout the whole documentary. Well, there's two things here. One is that people have to understand that vernacular puts us, in general, it puts us in a position of extreme disadvantage on the world stage. Okay, so people, let's be very clear about that. If we conduct ourselves that way in amongst the larger society, it puts us at an extreme disadvantage. But secondarily, we should all be equipped with the ability to communicate on different levels depending on who we're speaking to. So I'm very clear, even in my own household, there's certain terms that I don't use. Like my sons and daughters, they don't know bitches and hoes and niggas. Like they don't know that. I grew up on that. We talk that way. But that's not a legacy that I want to pass down to my children. And the point is this, that the programming is so deep and it's been so glorified too. The whole ghetto, what I call ghetto centrism, it's been so glorified. And again, to grow up in the ghetto and to look at that as with pride, to say that, look, I'm from the ghetto and I'm going to stay there, there's nothing that you should be prideful about. The idea is that you want more for yourself, and most definitely you want something more for your children. So that means that you also have to be dedicated to your own transformation. That means the language that you speak, that means the manner in which you behave, that means the mentality that you hold. It has to be transformative. You always have to aspire towards becoming something greater. Why is it that when we do aspire to become greater, in terms of the manner in which we think, the manner in which we speak, the manner in which we behave, even the manner in which we dress, even the manner in which we relate to our women as men, now all of a sudden we're not black. Now all of a sudden we're trying to act white.
Wow.
In other words, now that I'm respecting my wife and respecting women, now that I'm not calling my brothers niggas, and now that I'm not calling women bitches and hoes, and now that I don't have my pants sagging off my ass, now somehow I'm not black. See, part of what I'm getting to is that part of the programming in terms of how other groups of people are perceiving African Americans is the programming is so deep that is what they expect of us, as if we're not a diverse people, as if we don't have, yes, some of us we conduct ourselves in a certain type of way, others of us we conduct ourselves in another type of way. It's not like we're all one thing. And why is it that the reason that the one thing that most people tend to see, not just African American folk, but other groups of people, what they expect, I should say, what they expect in terms of what it means to be black, is rooted in ghetto-centrism. That we have to be these gangster archetypes as men. We have to be the bitch or the hoe or the stripper or the over-sexualized African American female. That's what it means to be black. So this is what I'm saying, that the programming is so deep that it not only has impacted what we expect from ourselves as African American people, but also what other groups of people expect in terms of what an African American should be. And I just want people to understand, we're more than that. Not all of us have a whole bunch of baby mamas out there. Not all of us, again, not all of us are out here here living sexually promiscuous lifestyle. Not all of us are physically violent. Not all of us are calling our women bitches and hoes. There's plenty of us who are dedicated husbands to our wives, fully committed to our children. We're in our children's lives every single day. We're raising them up. We're doing it the right way, and we're passing down a legacy that is not rooted in disrespect, as in the language that we use. Nigga, fuck you, bitch ass nigga. You know, it's not rooted in that. There are those of us who are transcending that, and we're providing a new modeling in terms of vernacular, in terms of mentality, in terms of the manner in which we present ourselves, the manner in which we dress. We're creating a whole new paradigm for our children. And so, in other words, what I'm saying is that part of the programming and how it has impacted people is that their expectations of what an African American is has been so degraded because of the programming that they don't necessarily perceive that African Americans can be something more than that.
Well, I'm sitting here like Scooby-Doo with my mouth open, but I understand exactly what you're talking about because not only has it affected consciousness of the community and outside the perception, but towards each other. You know, me growing up, because I'm an artist, I've always been artistic, and you're an artist as well, and this is one of the reasons why I love you, because your expansion on thinking. You know, writers and people in the creative space were very different. I'm just going to call it what it is. I'm very proud of that. We're different than the layman. Our consciousness and the way that we think and perceive reality, because those vernaculars, those pieces of language go beyond anything else. So our expansion of the way that we see things is very different. However, within our own group, you know, my whole life people were like, oh, you're a white girl. And I'm like, well, really? What does that mean? You know what I mean? I had to deal with that my whole life. And even to this day, I'm in my mid-40s. I've had people say things to me, and it's a mind blower because you see the indoctrination unfold of what people's perception is of what you should be, and we've accepted these doctrines of what we should be that hasn't even been written by us, FYI. So, you know, when you claim your sovereignty as a sovereign human being, you know, I've had to say on my page many times, just because I look like you, don't equate that and put me in a little box, because I am not that. I am a sovereign being, and I'm gonna roll and do my own thing. So don't make assumptions of what you think that I think, who I am, how I perceive reality, because I am my own sovereign being. I'm an artist, and I have a different scape of reality that you do. So all of the little hooping and hollering that you do and ruminating on, you know, this and that, we've transcended some of those things. I'm not about that. So don't be putting me and tagging me on these little ideas that you think, you know, are relevant, because I go beyond that. I'm a lover of humanity, and I know that you are a lover of humanity. I don't play those games. So, you know, once you understand the indoctrination and how deep it goes, and you have an education, an actual formal education as you do, you can transcend these things. But I'm telling you, Lenon, this I want to go down the rabbit hole on a different path. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bite my tongue, because there's a spiritual aspect to this as well. That is, because you know me, I think from a very metaphysical place of reality, and there's a deeper underlining case to, well, you know what? Let's go down the rabbit hole. Because how can you not talk about this? You know, we're more than just this physical aspect of reality. What is your perception on soul, Lenon? What is this doing to our collective souls as a collective, as the divine feminine and masculine and beyond? What is this doing to us?
Well, it's decreasing the likelihood of us coming together in completion as men and women. And we can look at that on a physical level. We can look at that on a metaphysical level. If we want to look at it energetically, there is an energetic balance that we experience when we are functioning, relationally speaking, in a positive way. In fact, I mean, I've been so blessed. My wife and I, as an example, we don't even argue. We ain't got no time to be up here arguing. We got 5 babies to take care of. We laugh all the time. We enjoy each other. You know, I crack jokes all day. I know I sound serious on the show, but most of the time when I'm here at home, I'm doing silly stuff to make my children and my wife laugh. There's something about that grows out of the purification process that needs to take place within men and women so that we can get closer to the essence of who we really are. And we want to look at that physically, but more specifically, metaphysically. So what I'm saying is that a lot of the programming is designed, even energetically, to destabilize the probability of us coming together as men and women in positive relationships. And this doesn't necessarily even have to be positive relationships that are intimate. I'm just talking about how men see women, essentially, and how they respect the feminine energy. Because there's something very, okay, let me not say too much, but I just happen to say it. I'm a married man, but I'm going to say it, okay? There's something. See, when men get to the point of true appreciation of the feminine energy, and I'm not just talking about physically, women, I'm talking about the energy that women have. There's something very special about that energy. And see, the thing is that when women are able to heal, and when they go through the purification process themselves, and they get closer to source, if you will. What I mean by source, I'm talking about closer to their true feminine power. They then begin to really appreciate the masculine energy even more. Now, throughout my life, I've had so many women who have come and stepped up to the plate and who have helped me in my progression, starting with my grandma and my mother, of course. I got a lot of respect. My mother raised six children by herself. And while my father was in her life, he was abusive, physically abusive, and verbally extremely physically abusive. I saw some heinous things. And on top of that, drugs, alcohol addiction. At a certain point, he was on crack cocaine. By the time I'm 13, he's gone out of the home. The point is this: for me to see my mother operate as a feminine being, and be able to do her best to raise us under those situations and circumstances, I have no choice but to have respect, not just for women, but for the feminine energy. You see, the feminine energy is such that it is so compassionate, right? It tends to be concerned about other people more so than the masculine. The masculine energy tends to be about trying to provide protection on things, and in some cases to a fault, and we don't necessarily think about how other people are feeling about it. No, it's just about this is what needs to happen, and go and do what I say. So what I'm saying is that one of the things that happens when a man begins to purify himself and really begins to get closer to the feminine is he will then begin to within himself develop those aspects that are most important within the feminine. And so he begins to develop within himself the ability to have compassion, more compassion for others. He develops the ability within himself to be more nurturing. See, now, and see, I can already hear some men, well, that's some gay stuff. That's, we don't need to be, this is how we would talk. We don't need to be that. That's some sissy stuff. That's some punk stuff. But we see what we're saying? What we're saying is, when men speak like that, what we're saying is ultimately that somehow, to be able to become a complete being energetically, and this is one of the beautiful things that takes place when you're in a positive relationship, a lot of that feminine energy begins to rub off on you, and you start to tone down the masculine aspects of you that are destructive. It's a very complementary type of an experience, but there are so many men, when they even see that process, they begin to recoil, and they speak ill of it. But the truth of the matter is that the reason why they do this is because they haven't had the experience. They haven't seen the true blessing that takes place when not only the woman's feminine energy begins to influence the man in a positive way, but the man's masculine energy begins to influence the woman in a positive way. And through this experience, and me and my wife have had it now for 16 years, there's a level of balance that begins to take place within the man and within the woman. So part of what I'm saying, to make a long story short, I didn't mean to go too far into this, but part of what I'm saying is that a lot of the program and a lot of the indoctrination that we have experienced, and in particular a lot of the programs that we have received as men, has set us up to wherein we are shutting ourselves off from, in the very first place, having respect for women physically, but in the second place, and more importantly, having respect for women on a metaphysical level, to appreciate the feminine energy. And part of what I was going to say, but I was hesitant to say it, I won't say it here, is that not only is the feminine energy present in the woman in terms of the manner in which women see things, with a lot more compassion, tend to have more peace. I'm talking about women who have remained balanced within their feminine energy. Sometimes women have had traumatic experiences, many have, and those traumatic experiences impacts their ability to be expressive feminine, to express their femininity, and so they have to go through a healing process. The more they heal, the more they're able to bring that femininity out, to have compassion, to be nurturing, right? These types of things. As I have seen this in women, it's not just in terms of their mental outlook, it's even in how they talk, how they say words. If you listen very carefully, how women even speak, you can hear that feminine energy that is present in there. And let's take it a step further. Even how women walk My goodness gracious. Okay, I'm a married man, so ain't nothing else going on beyond this. I'm just telling y'all the truth. I am so appreciative of how women talk, how women walk. Okay, the curvature, okay, of their body is quite different than the curvature of the men's body. I'm appreciative of that because all of that too is a manifestation of what? The feminine energy. So getting back to the metaphysical aspect, the programming, on one hand, it forces a lot of men to not only simply look to the physical, but then also to look to the physical in such a way to where they dehumanize and objectify women sexually. Okay, that's already a problem. But even deeper still, it tends to stop men from thinking metaphysically and having an appreciation for feminine energy in the first place.
Ajay. You know, when I interviewed Spirit Halima, there were two men that I mentioned who I said really understood the feminine and divine energy of the essence of that Ache. I said Lenon Honor and Siddiqui Bakari, and there's some other few people. But me and Spirit Halima talked you up. Now, family, if you've gone into my archives and listened to that interview with Spirit Halima, you got a personal take of why I love Lenon Honor. I love his family. I love his wife because he has a true understanding of what the Ache is of the masculine and the feminine and can explain it very well. You just got an example of that. And I have one more question and then I'm going to let you go because I respect your role as father and husband, and I know everyone is interviewing you to the whole because this is such a wonderful film, and this is going to be a heavy one, and I'm going to pose the same question to Siddiqui Bakari because we're going to go in. To me, from a metaphysical level of reality, all of these mental surface layer technologies are creating a soulless society because it's really dealing from, again, a Darwinistic material level, superficial, layered, non-connected spiritual base. So when you objectify women and make them into objects, you don't have to take responsibility. You can indoctrinate the generations and get them used to this particular type of nature that eventually they will submit to their own slavery. Do you think that the larger agenda is to literally create a soulless society through eugenics? Because there's a bigger picture to this story. We're only talking about one little slither. What is your opinion on that, Lenon?
Yes, well, when we speak about eugenics, we're talking about the notion that particular groups of people should have the right and the ability to procreate for the purpose of creating a sort of master race. And that therefore there must be other groups of people that should not have that right, and so therefore their populations must be controlled. And so now we get into concepts and ideas of population control. If you want to control the population, if you want to keep populations under control, what you do is you destabilize male-female relationships.
Indeed.
In other words, you impede upon a woman's appreciation of men. You impede upon a man's appreciation of women to such a degree to where in the manner in which they see each other is as if they are in opposition or even in competition for that matter. Now, I call this the male versus female war imprint program. So in other words, if you do want to put forth eugenics and you do want to put forth population, the control of particular groups of people in terms of their population, then you destabilize the manner in which men and women relate to each other. So therefore, to promote negative male-female relationships would be part of the agenda. And one of the primitive themes within NWA's lyrics is the promotion of negative male-female relationships.
Yep.
And see, the thing is this, that it's not just NWA. It is, throughout most popular musical forms and genres of music, we have this in the lyrical content. In most movies, we have this being presented. This notion that men and women are to be at odds with each other and that we are to be in competition and that we are to be at war with each other. I think that there is definitely an agenda, and that's precisely why there is so much instability within our family structure, because the foundation of the family structure is men and women coming together in positive relationships. The degree to which you have a positive relationship with the mother and father will have a direct impact upon the degree to which your family is whole and happy. And let me take this a step further. The happiness factor is key. I have a saying that spirituality is simply the ability to materialize and manifest happiness at will. You know, this means that even metaphysically, the goal is to experience happiness while we are here in the flesh, if you would. The ultimate goal is for all of us to experience happiness. Ain't nobody looking for anything else. We may think we're looking for something else, but whatever it is that we think that we're looking for outside of happiness is really what we perceive that we think is going to bring us happiness. Oh, I need to make more money. I need to earn more money. Why? Because money's going to bring me happiness. Well, what you need to be looking for is happiness. The money gonna come, but let's be clear about what you're really looking for. Oh, I want to be in a relationship. No, what are you really looking for? I'm looking for happiness. Okay, well then focus on happiness, but that also means that you need to prepare yourself for a positive relationship so that you are happy enough so that when you experience that positive relationship, you don't self-sabotage. Now, the relationship can help to bring that happiness, but let's be clear about what you're really pursuing. You're pursuing happiness. Well, I want to get a better job. Well, why do you want to get a better job? Because it's going to bring you more happiness. Okay, then what you're really looking for is happiness. The problem is, and the challenge is when we talk about spirituality or even metaphysics, is that for so many of us, we are put in a situation where we substitute other things in place of happiness, and then we pursue those other things, believing that somehow those other things are going to automatically materialize happiness in our life.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, sis, sometimes we also pursue the mentalities that destabilize our ability to be able to create positive relationships with each other as men and women. And these types of mentalities are presented. You gave references to some TV shows earlier. Whether we look at the music, Desperate Housewives, whether we look at, what was it? You said the
Love and Hip Hop.
Love and Hip Hop, Empire. All of that is not designed to assist people to, create happiness in their lives. It's actually designed to do the exact opposite. Well, the same thing applies to Gangster rap. It was designed for that particular effect. And if you can impact how men see women in a negative way and how women see men in a negative way, and you impact in a negative way how they relate to each other, okay, now you destabilize the family unit. Now you also impact populations, and even if people are procreating, now those children are being raised in toxic, negative environments, not just in terms of their communities, but also within their own households. So that too is a form of oppression in and of itself. So all I'm saying here, sis, is that part of what we have to do in terms of a solution is, in the first place, recognize that the programming exists. I think part of what my documentary does is it outlines how the programming is there, but then also take steps to begin to protect our subconscious minds from that programming so that we can begin to think critically about what it is that we need to change in terms of our mentality. I would propose that if, in fact, as men and women, we begin to transform how we think about each other in the first place and how we relate to each other and make it more positive, then it will definitely impact the types of family institutions that we create, and therefore things like population control or eugenics no longer have an effect. One other thing I want to say real quick is I want people to understand something, that though there are agendas out there, that nothing can overcome the power of love. And see, part of having the power of love is having respect. I'm talking about love between a man and a woman, is having respect for each other in the first place. When a man truly respects women and when a woman truly respects men, I'm talking about on a humanistic level, just to have that level of respect. It transforms the whole dynamics in terms of how we interact with each other, whether that is physically or metaphysically, right? I mean, we can even say sexually, that it impacts how we interact with each other. The point is this, that even though there are agendas out there that are designed to oppress certain groups of people and also to promote this notion of eugenics or even population control, one of the things that will inevitably happen on this planet, and it may take another 10,000 or 20,000 years, at some point, the notion of even race will not even be in our vernacular.
Yep.
Because the dream of the earth and of the earth's children, which is us, the dream that the earth has for her children, feminine, it's a water planet. The dream of the earth is to see all of her children reconnect. And so over time, what's going to happen through our interactions and mingling as masculine and feminine, and us getting together and having some sex. That's part of it too. Let's be real. Part of what's going to happen is a total transformation of the species all around the world. Where at a certain point, there will no longer be white, quote unquote, white or black.
That's right.
We're all going to be, a similar type of a tannish color. And at that point, we can let go of a lot of the programming that we us so. And see, once we let go of that programming, my wife and I, we don't even teach our children those concepts of race. We don't even teach that, because what we teach is love and respect. And the reason why that's important is because once we begin to let that go, and the more and more of us that let that go, now we will be able to begin to materialize happiness at will. Okay, now we're stepping into our spiritual power. See, spirituality, again, is the ability, from my opinion, is the ability to materialize and manifest happiness at will. At will. When we let go of the things that divide us as a species, but then also as masculine and feminine, when we let go of those things, now we have greater power to materialize and manifest happiness at will. And at the end of the day, that is what we are all in search of: happiness. Programming like NWA, what they put forth, the programming in gangster rap, what it put forth, the disrespect of women being the feminine thing, programming in terms of blaxploitation films, the pimp culture and the player culture and the Mac and the pimp, all this kind of stuff, all of that was put forth so as to destabilize the manner in which we interacted with each other. Well, what that also means is that if we know that the programming is there, now it is time for us to begin to protect our subconscious mind and our children, by the way, from this type of programming, and then begin to reconstruct how it is that we see ourselves as men, how it is that we see ourselves as women, and then, of course, how it is that we interact with each other on a relational level as men and women. Ultimately, that will be what will lead us to happiness.
I'm so selfish, but I'm excited because I love listening to Creative Souls and watching your progression. What is coming up next? Have you even thought about that? You're constantly creating. You have tons of things in that expansive water mind of yours. Have you thought about that, Lenny?
Yes. Well, I still need to edit and cut a theatrical version of the film. And actually, I'm going to be starting that tomorrow. Also, today I have a YouTube version going up. It's an overview of the film. I think it's about 17 minutes long. I cut that over the last couple of days. So that's specifically dealing with this documentary, Beyond Gangster, BlackFace, a critical analysis of gangster rap. But there's two other major things that are coming up. And I still have to do the promotion. And this part, thank you for having me on your show, because this helps with promotion and marketing of other films. So thank you so much. So I'll be doing more of these as we progress. But creatively, there's two other things that I really have looking forward to kind of finalizing. And the first may not be perceived to be creative, but in point of fact, it is. My family and I, we are going to be moving to Utah in a month. And I want people to understand something. One of the things that took place throughout the 2 years that I was working on this documentary was that my family and I, we have been so blessed. We have been so blessed to be able to be in a position finally within the next 4 weeks to move out of this neighborhood. And this neighborhood over the last 8 years has really been hard hit with drugs, other stuff going on too, by the way, that I don't even want to speak about. And it really put me in a mental state of having to be ultra vigilant and really kind of over exaggerating the mask and energy to a point to where when I'm walking outside, I have to be someone different just so that I can keep my family protected and safe. That was a challenge in and of itself, because you have to be in a creative space. And men, if you're operating like that, it's very difficult to be in a creative space because you're in survival mode. You're trying to protect your family, and I've had to be that. So it's even kind of like a mini miracle for me to even finish the project and have the positive energy and have it come off the way that it has come off. It's really been a minor miracle. But the point is this: that when we move, not only are we going to be in a safer neighborhood, in a more peaceful neighborhood, but also have been blessed with space. In other words, the house that we're moving to is about 3 times the size that our current house is. It's in a much better neighborhood, safer neighborhood, and we'll be paying the same amount of rent. So what I'm getting at, even though that doesn't seem to be a creative venture, it actually is, because I recognize that there was a time period that within my own consciousness where I recognized that this is something that needs to take place for my family. And I worked my ass off, sis, to get this documentary done, do it in the right way, with integrity, but also produce something that is going to benefit whoever sees the film. You're going to benefit from viewing the film, and by putting together something like that and doing it with integrity, it's a natural law in the universe. That energy is coming back to you, one way or the other. And if you do it the right way, and if your intent is good, and you put forth something that is going to be a blessing upon the earth, the energy is going to come back that you put in tenfold. And that's precisely what has started to take place. Even me talking to you right now is part of that energy coming back. That's why I'm so very appreciative. But this is a creative venture for my family to be moving in about a month to a beautiful home, a safe neighborhood, and we're going to be in a position to have more peace inside of our home and in our household. And the thing is that the peace there will mirror the love that we have within our household. Very, very important. So that's one thing. I know it may not seem to be creative, but that is a creative venture when we visualize and have vision of having something better for our children as men, for our wives as husbands, or vice versa if you're a woman. And then over time you work and then ultimately it materializes. That is a creative process from the mental space or the spiritual space materializing into the physical. And then of course, one of the things that I set aside when I started the documentary, working on the documentary, which was about 2 years ago, it took 2 years to get the documentary done. I was working on an autobiography of my life, where I talked more specifically about growing up without a father and how it was that I was able to go from being a fatherless child to becoming an honorable man, wherein I take my fatherhood responsibilities very seriously. I take my husbandhood responsibilities very seriously, and I have a great deal of respect for women. And this is something that I live every single day. This was the opposite of what I experienced from my own father. So that is the next creative project that I kind of had to set aside. I think I got about halfway through that book. I think it was on page 187. Once we move and get over to Utah, I'll be able to set up my space and I'll start to work out the second half of my life story, because I think it's an important one to tell, and it's going to help a lot of young men who grow up without fathers to realize that they do have the power to do something greater. If I could do it, they most definitely can do it. But then also it's going to provide a lot of women with an understanding that there are good men out here, and that there are good men out here who are single and who are willing and able to be dedicated to you, and who are willing and able to be able to be dedicated husbands to you, but also committed fathers to your children. This is a very important story that needs to be told. So that'll be the next thing, the two next things, most important things that I'll be working on.
Well, I'll be waiting for my next interview for the memoirs and autobiography. I'm just saying. Hello, I'm bold. I don't care. When I am dealing with creative people, I like to uplift and empower people, and all deals in the area of consciousness. I am so honored to know you, Lenon. There are many occasions that I've spoken about you, and you've been my mentor in many different ways, along with many other people, and I'm just so grateful for the work that you do, the contribution that you and your wife give to humanity. And I'm just saying, you might as well put out an album, because when I got done with the movie, I was like, oh snap, Lenon is singing. You better work that music, honey. I tell you, Lenon is like a man of multi-hats. It's like, and he does all of them well. It's really crazy. I'll be waiting for the album. I'm just saying. I'm just so grateful. I'm thankful, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud to see this documentary, and you go in, and I can't wait until the next project comes up. And good luck on Utah. You're gonna love it there. It's a beautiful place.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to speak on your show. I really do appreciate it. And if you don't mind, just for your listening audience, we do have a website, LenonHonor.com. We're also on YouTube. I'm saying we, my wife and I. And we also, if you're interested in the documentary, there's two sites that you can go to visit. If you want to view it, the online stream of the film, you can go to beyondgangsterblackface.vhx.com. That's beyondgangsterblackface.vhx.tv. That's it. Beyondgangsterblackface.vhx.tv. And you can rent it there, the stream, or you can actually purchase the stream there on that website. You can watch the full 1 hour and 43-minute documentary. And then you can head on over to beyondgangsterblackface.com, www.beyondgangsterblackface.com, if you want to order the DVD. And the DVD includes the 1 hour and 43-minute documentary, but then also has bonus features, and there's about an hour and 38 minutes worth of extra video content. And that's like clips that we were unable to actually have in the film. We have that laid out based upon the 12 entity guests. You can go in and listen to more of what they have to say in the special features. So if you're interested in the DVD, head on over to beyondgangsterblackface.com. If you're interested in viewing the film, you can head on over to beyondgangsterblackface.vhx.tv. And you may just want to rent it, and then after you rent it, go ahead and purchase the DVD. However you want to do it, I guarantee you that you will definitely walk away from the film with some knowledge that is definitely going to benefit you. And also, if you have children, my goodness, it's definitely going to help you to better protect your children's subconscious mind from negative media programming.
Well, there you have it, family, from Lenon Sherman Honor. Family, we can no longer stand by the side of the road. We just can't. We cannot stand by the side of the road. Life is too short. Feed the essence of your mind and consciousness. It all matters. I send you so much love, family. Until next time. Bye.